It is 2024, but in so many ways, it feels like 2019 when it comes to our education system. Now, yesterday I talked about how the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce released a response to the 2024 provincial budget that said investing more in our K to 12 public schools is just good business. It just makes sense. And as someone who has a grade 5 and a grade 7 just entered into the school system, I am in full support, of course, of the schools and the teachers and just the sense that this government is not only not giving them the funding they need, but also the moral support. And that is how it feels in 2024, like 2019, in terms of how our government is responding to the needs of the teachers and the schools. And it feels almost exactly the same way we've been talking about nurses and other issues, where we see a mounting crisis, we see people not coming into that department, that industry, that vocation, and it leads to all kinds of gaps and holes in our system. Last week, an article went viral. I put it up on the screen here. It's called "The Teachers Are Not All Right," and you can probably find it by Googling online. It's behind a paywall with the Telegraph Journal, but you might be able to find a screenshot. It was written by Dr. Roger Saul and Dr. Melissa Garrett, and basically describes the state of teachers and how, a couple days ago I mentioned that the gaps for filling in full-time classroom positions this year are being filled by supply teachers. The province had to issue permits to supply teachers just to get them in on a essentially temporary basis, and a mass majority, 80 to 90% of those were over the age of 50. So we're not seeing young people coming up through the teaching education system to fill these roles. Well, these two folks who wrote this opinion article, Dr. Saul and Dr. Garrett, are professors of education. And so they say here, we are teachers, we are professors of education who teach teachers from across the province. We're also parents of children in public schools. And from our vantage points, we've watched with alarm at the recent circumstance teachers now find themselves in. You can then go through this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing for the sake of time, and essentially pick out any sentence, any paragraph which shows the shortfall that these doctors, these professors of education, are ringing the bell on. I'll just focus in on one here. Teachers are overworked and burnt out, many fearing the prospect of a new normal premised on daily survival rather than on the loftier goals they once held upon entering the profession, are contemplating leaving it. That is, again, sounds like the nurses, sounds like a lot of things where people are looking at the state of the profession in this province and saying, I don't think I want that life. We talked about how doctors are facing a similar situation, where they are looking at family practice and saying, no, thank you. It's chaotic. I didn't sign up for medicine to become an entrepreneur. I'm going to go into specialization. We are seeing that across the board, and we need to address these. The needs of what needs to be changed. And so I want to bring your attention, speaking of what needs to be changed, on that report, the 8 questions rather, that the New Brunswick Teachers Association sent to political parties. And the Green response, I mentioned yesterday what their response was to one of the questions, but in terms of this morale and what classrooms and the education system needs, not just in terms of money, but in terms of respect and the kinds of things we are seeing, how teachers want to thrive and flourish, I want to draw your attention to the Green response to one of the questions here in that survey. And here was the question: what is your position particularly to government policies and resources that promote a positive learning and working environment that restores respect and prevents harassment in school communities and online? And again, that's not just harassment and restoring respect for students, that is also for teachers. And here's the Green Party response. The Green Party believes that restoring respect in our school communities begins at the top with a leadership from the Premier. New Brunswick needs a leader who respects teachers and educational staff, setting a positive tone for the entire education system. And to support this, we advocate for government policies and resources that ensure that schools are well equipped with necessary supplies and building materials and allows teachers to focus on their teaching. And so to promote a positive learning environment, we Greens are committed to establishing a universal school breakfast and lunch program tailored to local needs and embedding support teams in schools to assist with mental health and behavioral issues. So here we are talking about giving the teachers and the schools not just the supports they need, but again, contributing to that morale and that respect that will contribute to a healthy learning environment overall. Recently, when I started this project, I went in to check on what were the comments made by the premier. Because we talked about how, well, the Green response here was about how it starts from the top down. What is the premier saying about our education system? Well, in 2019, the premier said it was a disaster. And I wanted to pull up that quote because Megan Mitton, the MLA, Green MLA at the time, and still, she was responding to that comment. And so this is how it feels in 2024, the same way it did in 2019, where when I went to search for that comment, Google search, I was met with a whole bunch of results where Premier Higgs said something recently. And what he said recently in 2024 was that he would feel worried if he were sending kids into the school system. Well, again, I got to say, I am and I do every single day. The only thing I'm worried about is the lack of respect, the lack of support, the lack of funding, the lack of priority, again, along with the Fredericton Chamber of Commerce, that our schools and our teachers and our districts and our education support staff get. And so I want to close full circle here with how I began. Megan Mitton in 2019, she said in response to Premier Higgs calling this a disaster, the education system a disaster. She said the Premier's statement about it being a disaster is insulting to educators and students. If there's a disaster in our school system, it's a lack of resources available for educators to do their jobs. And so we said in 2019, I stand by it today as someone who's running for MLA. We want to see respect restored. We cannot be talking about our school system being a disaster. And if it were, and if the premier were worried about sending kids to school, they have had 6 years to do it, 4 years of a majority, and it still isn't fixed and it still isn't done. We can be proud of our education system, and we can have teachers entering the profession knowing that they can focus on teaching with the right solutions for our schools in Saint Croix. That is what I want to do. That's what I want to bring. It's just good business. It's an investment in the future, in our kids, and in generations to come. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to knocking on some doors in St. Andrews this afternoon.